Welcome back to another video in my playlist where I teach you everything you need to know to build and configure a racing drone, quadcopter, freestyle drone, whatever you want to call it. We take it from a pile of parts on the desk all the way through to ready to fly. And in this video, we're going to be setting up your flight modes. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. Most of the people watching this video are working their way through and they know the drill by now. But if you happen to have stumbled across this video through some other reason, it's part of a playlist. The playlist is linked in the video description and it's a full tutorial. Even if you're not going to follow along and build this exact quad, I've tried to put so much information here about just building and configuring a quadcopter using Betaflight. So I hope you'll check it out. And what we're doing in this video is setting up our flight modes. And what flight modes means is basically the ability to flip a switch on your controller and have the quadcopter do something in response to that. And the most basic thing that we're going to have it do is arm the quadcopter. Arming means that the quadcopter is ready to fly. So when you first plug the quadcopter in, if you move the sticks around, nothing will happen. And that's for safety. We don't want to plug the quadcopter in and bump the sticks and have it spin the props while we're still holding it, have it injure us. That can be some serious injuries if that happens by accident. So before we can fly, we have to arm the quadcopter, and we do that in the Betaflight Modes tab. Now here in the Betaflight Modes tab is where we're going to add an arming range. But there's something we have to do first, and we'll have to go by the receiver tab, because if you look at the receiver tab, so I've got 8 channels here. You can see that there's actually 16 total channels, but we're only using the first 8 channels for reasons which I gave earlier. And our first 4 channels are used for the sticks, pitch, roll, yaw, and throttle. But then we have aux 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have 4 auxiliary channels that we can use for these functions. And you'll notice that when I move the switches, none of the aux channels are moving. And in fact, there's way more switches here on this transmitter than there are aux channels that we could possibly want to use. So what we need to do is we need to tell the controller which one of these switches goes with which one of these aux channels. And here's how we're going to do that. I'm going to long press the model key, and that's going to take me to model setup. And then I'm going to press the page key until I get to the mixes screen. And the mixes screen is where we tell the radio which physical control, like a stick or a switch or one of these little twiddly knobs here, we tell the radio which physical control is going to control which of these aux channels. So we can see that channels 1, 2, 3, and 4 are already mapped to our 4 main control channels, and we're going to leave that. You don't want to change that. But I'm going to scroll down to channel 5, and I'm going to click the mouse wheel or the jog wheel, and that's going to create a new mix for channel 5. Now a mix there's a whole bunch of parameters here that you could screw with, but the good news is most of those parameters are really more for airplanes than quadcopters, and setting up mixes in a quadcopter is usually pretty freaking simple. Here's all you got to do. You can name the mix if you prefer to give it a name. I'm not going to do that here, but the same way that we named the quadcopter way back when we very first created a model, we could put some words in here and name it. I'm going to go down to the source parameter, and the source parameter tells the radio which switch or other physical control is controlling this aux channel. And right now the source is S1, which is, oh, here we go. It's this knob here. So since the source defaults to S1, you can see that when I turn that knob, the aux 1 is moving. By the way, little point of potential confusion here. We're working with channel 5, but we're moving aux 1. Aux 1 is channel 5, aux 2 is channel 6, because the first 4 control channels are used for the main sticks controls, and then the first auxiliary channel is channel 5. So channel 5 is aux 1. But that's not what we want. We don't want this slider to control it. What I want you to do is I want this switch here. We're going to use this switch on the left-hand side to arm the quad. We're going to arm and disarm. Very easy to get at with your index finger. Super simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the source parameter, S1. I'm going to click the mouse wheel or the jog wheel one time until it's blinking. And then you could scroll through this list to try to find that switch, but there's a way easier way to do it. all you have to do is just go and move the switch one time, and it automatically picks up that switch as the source for the mix. And now you'll see that if I move that switch, aux 1 goes from 987 to 2011. And that's what we need to do. Now that we've done that, we can go back to the Modes tab and we can finish setting up our arming mode. And the way we're going to do that is here's the arm mode right here, and we're going to hit Add Range. And the first thing we need to do is tell the flight controller which aux channel is going to be used to activate this mode. So in this case, we're going to use aux 1. That's the switch we decided and the aux channel we decided we wanted to use. So we're going to select aux 1 here. And then what I want you to do is I want you to move that switch, and you'll see this yellow tick mark moves up and down. It's showing the current channel position. And we need to decide which of these positions we want arm to be and which we want disarm to be. Now the way that I always like to do it is to have the switch disarmed when it is pulled forwards. And one reason I like to do that is because when I'm holding the transmitter, I can just kind of rest my finger against that switch and prevent me from accidentally arming while there's other safety checks, but that's just a basic safety check. And then when I arm, now I'm armed and I just rest my finger there, and that has two purposes. I can get at this switch if I so desire, but also if I'm resting my finger here, there's no chance that I'll accidentally disarm while I'm in flight if I like jerk my hand or something. So I like to have the switch pushed away to arm and pulled towards to disarm. You don't have to do it that way, and some people don't do it that way. The beauty and the good and the bad of this is that you can set it up any way you want, and it also can be a little overwhelming. So if it's your first time, just set it up the way I do it, but if you have a preference, you could do it a different way if you like. So I'm going to put that switch in the arm position. I'm going to look at this yellow tick mark and see where the channel is, and I'm going to drag this range indicator here so it covers that yellow tick mark. And basically, whenever the channel is in this indicated position, the mode will become active. Armed. Well, actually, I have to go down to the lower right and hit Save. And now when I hit Save, you'll see that when I put the switch in the disarm position, the arm mode is gray. When I put the switch in the arm position, the arm mode actually turns red and says disabled. For safety reasons, the quadcopter will not actually arm when it's plugged into USB. But we can see that it would activate, except that it will refuse to activate because we're plugged into USB. So great, we've got our arming mode set up. Now I want to give you guys a little bit of a safety warning because what we've done here is actually more dangerous than you might think. It is really easy to arm the quadcopter just by bumping this switch. And believe me when I tell you, this happens way more often than you think. You got the radio dangling around your neck. You finished flying, you disarm, you bend over to pick up the quad, and while you're just shuffling everything around in your hands, you bump that arm switch, and the quadcopter arms and the motors are spinning. And some people have been cut pretty badly, sometimes on their hands or forearms, sometimes on their face. You do not want this to happen. So the way to do this is to have a sort of a secondary safety switch that prevents you from arming. And there are various ways you can do that, but I actually have started doing it this way. It's really simple, and I think it works really well. You see, the quadcopter will refuse to arm when the throttle is not all the way down. So I use my throttle as my safety. This is not the way I used to do it. Some people are watching this video who have been watching my channel for a long time and are going, wait, no, didn't you tell it that there are other ways to do it? This is how I do it now. It's simple and effective. When I am done flying, okay, so I'm flying, I finish flying, I land, I disarm, and then I raise the throttle. And now, even if I bump that switch by accident, the quadcopter cannot arm because the throttle is raised. When I'm ready to fly, I lower the throttle, and I arm the quad, and I'm off, away I go. And I want you to make a habit of doing that. When you disarm, raise the throttle, and leave it up until you're ready to fly again. That's your safety switch that prevents you from accidentally arming when you didn't mean to. Now at this point we could go fly, but there are a few more modes that you're going to want to set up. So let's go back into our mixes screen. We're going to hit return and back out of channel 5. And I want you to set up channel 6 and 7 as well. And here's what I'd like you to do. For channel 6, I want you to set as the source this switch on the face. This is the one I like to use, and it is switch SD. And I'm just going to hit escape and back out of that. And for channel 7, I want you to set as the source on the back of the radio, on the shoulder, this large momentary switch. It's momentary because it resets itself. And that is switch SH. So this is what your mixer should look like. And then here in the Modes tab, here's what we're going to do. We're going to add a range for angle mode. Angle mode is going to be aux2. And if I flip switch SD, you can see that moving. And I want angle mode to be in the middle position for aux2. And we're going to go down. Beeper mode, we're going to hit add range. And that's going to be aux3. And when I pull this momentary switch here, that's going to activate the beeper. So I'm going to pull that momentary switch. Here's the little yellow tick mark. I'm going to move this to cover the yellow tick mark. And there's one more thing. Flip over after crash mode. We're going to hit add range. And that is going to be aux2. That's this SD switch on the front. And that's going to be all the way down position. And we'll drag this over so it covers that. And we'll hit save. I'm going to explain what all that was in just a second. After I hit save, I'm going to activate this hide unused modes option, and that'll clean this screen up and let us see what we've got. So here on the upper left, we've got arming and disarming. No way to confuse that. On switch SD on the front, we've got nothing in the up position. And the way that most transmitters are assumed to work, this is just a convention, is that all the switches in the up position is sort of the default. I'm violating that with my arming switch. I know, because my arming switch, the default position is towards me. I'm a weirdo. What can I say? But when that switch is in the up position, we're in acro mode. If you want auto level mode, that's angle mode. And in auto level mode, when you center the sticks, the quad will level back out again. That makes it a little easier for some people to fly. Auto level mode is going to be there. And then when switch SD is all the way down, we're in what's called flip crash mode. If the quadcopter crashes and it's upside down, flip crash mode reverses the motors. So instead of making the quadcopter fly up into the air, it pushes the quadcopter and flips it over after you crash. That's super useful for not having to walk to pick up your quad after you crash, or even you can use it to like get your quadcopter out of a tree. If you get stuck in the tree, you activate turtle mode and you just go and knock it out of the tree. So that's how I set up most of my quads. And then finally, we've got the beeper. And the beeper is useful for if you crash your quad in the grass and you can't find it, you can activate the beeper and beep, 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 beep. It's especially useful for me because I can't see worth a damn. And so when I take my goggles off, if I don't have my glasses on, I can't find my quad. Like a blind man, just beep, 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 beep. So that's how I like to set up my flight modes. And that is going to bring us to the end of this video. Now you know how to set up flight modes. And there are a whole lot more flight modes that you could set up. These are the ones that I set up on every single one of my quads. And that's why I've decided these are the ones I'm going to give you to start with. As you get more familiar with Betaflight, you may want to experiment with some of those other modes. And basically all you do is you take a spare aux channel, you assign it to a switch, and then you go into the modes tab like I showed you, and you decide which switch positions are going to activate that mode. I actually have a super advanced tutorial, because if you think about it, you're going to run out of aux channels pretty fast. Right? All these different modes, especially if you're only using 8 channels like we are. I've got actually a video where I show you how to put all of the aux channels on, all of the aux modes basically on one channel and free up a bunch of channels. This is pretty advanced and maybe not something you would want to tackle your first time out, but if you're curious, I'll put a link to that in the video description and you can check it out. That's going to do it for this video. On to the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Happy flying.